Welcome to the first episode of the Philbrook Football Podcast. Today, I am joined by, and will always be joined by, my good pal, my brother, Cameron Philbrook.
Hey.
And I am Isaiah Philbrook, original OG brother. Just kidding, Cameron was there first. So, just to give a little bit of an intro on us, I will start. Isaiah, that is me. I started watching football about 2008. My stepdad at the time was a Seahawks fan, and I would watch football games with him. And I really started to like them, even though they sucked really bad back then. They were not good. Charlie Whitehurst at one point was our quarterback, our starting quarterback.
Clipboard Jesus,
yeah. So it wasn't a great season, but
no.
It was that was what hooked me for some reason. I was just like, I think I liked the name Whitehurst, and I was just like, I don't know, Whitehurst. It just kind of rolled off for me. But and since then, been a Seahawks fan since then. I've also been a supporter of the Falcons for about 5 years now. And I know some people are like, you can't have two teams. That's against the rules, but whatever. You can have two teams if you know about football. If you like the game of football, you're not just biased towards one team. Like, sometimes you can have another team you like.
Why not?
The Falcons were bad back then. Like, I think they went to the playoffs in 2012, but before that they were bad, and I think they had a 4-12 season before that. Give me some. They got my respect when they took down my Seahawks in 2012. I was like, okay, I'll respect you. And then they went, I think 6-10 the next season. So whatever.
Typical NFC South, though.
Yeah, typical NFC South. That's for sure. But that's ultimately, that's really all you need to know from my football background. Also a Ducks fan, but this is about professional football, so we won't really be talking about college. But we're both Ducks fans. I don't know when you started.
Yeah, so for the longest time I didn't really care about football. However, my sophomore year I went to the same high school as current NFL player Garrett Grayson, and that was really the first exposure I had to a good football team.
Yep.
And before then, the schools I had gone to had miserable football programs that were just hard to watch. But seeing Garrett Grayson, obviously the best player on the field, almost every time he took the field, just because of the playmaking ability he had. It was really fun to watch, and at the time I wanted to get into football, and I don't know if this is maybe how it was for you as well, but I kind of tried to root for regionally local teams.
Right.
The Huskies at the time weren't very good.
Yeah, they were not great back then.
So, however, this was, I guess, at the beginning of the 2009.
I was going to say, that's when I started too.
Right. And at the time, the Ducks that year had gone to the Rose Bowl.
Yep.
It was Chip Kelly's first year as head coach. We had guys like Jeremiah Masoli and LeGarrette Blount. And they obviously lost that Rose Bowl game that year. However, the next year they went to the national championship, and that was really the year that I really started focusing on football. And my fandom for the Ducks had started, and after that I started paying attention to the NFL as I started seeing some of my favorite players move on to professional football. And once I had a better understanding of the game, I tried to focus more on watching professional football than college football. So I also plan on getting into sports journalism for school here soon, maybe. So this is kind of like a good something for me to do to stay involved and get out the knowledge that I'm gaining.
Yeah, because we we talk about football all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's like all we talk about most of the time. It's like, hey, how are you? Good. Did you see the game? Like that's
Right.
most of our conversations, and we do that at family gatherings. And I mean, I'm sure someone has to get sick of it. Like I'm sure someone's just like, God, all they do is talk about football. Like,
Yeah, my girlfriend.
yeah, but it's what we love to do. We love to talk about football, and we pay so much attention to it. And I know personally for myself, I've just for the last handful of years now, I've just seen it in such an analytical way. Especially when we started playing fantasy football, that's what kind of really made me start seeing
For sure.
a lot of the numbers and a lot of the the stuff that isn't just on the field. You're seeing all this other stuff going on.
It helps to pay attention to other teams too.
Yeah,
when you play
absolutely.
fantasy football, you care about players from another team that maybe you had no connection to before.
Yep.
But because you have one guy on there, you want to do well. You're going to pay attention to those games as well, and it can really expand your knowledge of the league for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean it's like take for instance a guy like Jordan Howard. I would have no idea who Jordan Howard was if I didn't play fantasy football. Like I would be like, oh, who is this? There's some running back for the Bears. Oh, he had a good game. Like I wouldn't know anything about it, but because of fantasy football, I can keep track of all these players that are doing well and performing well, and I can see it from that perspective instead of just I saw this game and this guy played and did good. Like
yeah. So this podcast is going to be a mixture of fantasy related topics as well as projections on games in the future, as well as maybe some breakdowns on games that happened in the previous week. We're kind of just going to be not really all over the place, but we're going to cover a wide variety of football-related topics. So there's going to be plenty to talk about, a lot to listen to. Hopefully, you guys enjoy our banter as much as we do. Neither of us claim to be professionals by any means.
No, do not quote us. Do not say, well, the Philbrook football podcast said that, so-and-so is going to have a great game. Okay, like, I'm sorry if... I'm going back to the Chicago backfield. I'm sorry if Tariq Cohen doesn't have 7 receptions this week. My bad. Like...
I'm not responsible for your fantasy football team.
Yeah.
We hold no accountability for if your team underperforms.
But you know what? I am a reigning champion for fantasy football, so I mean, you should probably listen to what I say the most because I won.
I finished last place last year somehow, thanks to Brock Osweiler.
Yeah, Cameron went heavily into the Texans offense.
I went all in Texans offense, man. I thought it was gonna kill the league. Unfortunately, I didn't plan on Brock Osweiler being quite as terrible as he is. So
yep. He's not good.
So let's move on before I get triggered. We're gonna. I mean the content structure of our podcast is gonna be. We're gonna start recapping the games that happened last week, and then from there we'll talk about different talking points we might have as far as fantasy headlines are concerned, and projections about next week's games. So why don't we get right into the games that happened last week. Let's start with the Thursday night game with the Rams and the 49ers. The Rams came in 1-1, and the Niners came in 0-2. Rams won 41 to the 49ers 39. And the Rams are now 2-1, and the 49ers have yet to win a game this year. However, they have been competitive in their games.
Absolutely. The 49ers have looked much more competitive with Kyle Shanahan at the front there as the head coach and as the offensive coordinator. They have been way more competitive. In fact, this was the highest scoring Thursday night football game ever of any of the games.
Most of them are just shit shows anyways.
Yeah, they're not great. But... I mean, you saw Jared Goff was very efficient against, not a great defense, so take it with a grain of salt. But, At the same time, Goff was efficient with 3 touchdowns. Todd Gurley did great with 100-plus yards and 2 touchdowns.
Hoyer is definitely a guy who's going to be able to get the ball to his number one receiver. His only problem has been spreading the ball and making reads past the first one and being accurate about it. However, he has seemed to thrive under Kyle Shanahan's offense, which is good. I mean, he knows that he's not going to be the long-term starter for the Niners, so he's going to play as well as he can to try to get a job after probably this year. I've also been as equally impressed with how Sean McVay has really shown just how terrible of an offensive coach Jeff Fisher was. You have a guy like Todd Gurley, who's a top 5 running back in this league.
Absolutely.
Hands down, one of the best running backs in the league. And Jared Goff looked really terrible last year, and so far through 3 weeks, he's looked a lot better. He has really shown why he deserved to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft class.
Yeah, absolutely. He's looked great. The Rams have looked great, even though, I mean, we'll preface right now, we are, like we said, we are Seahawks fans, so we don't really want to root for the Niners or the Cardinals or the Rams, but we do like seeing competition in a division where the Seahawks have pretty much dominated it since basically 2012, since Russell Wilson came onto the team. I mean,
for sure.
The Cardinals have been competitive pretty much year in and year out, but they've been struggling these last couple of years. So
if Jeff Fisher was good for anything, it was just beating the Seahawks.
Yep, he would do that. That was the Rams Super Bowl, as we would call it. But so moving on from the Rams and Niners, we have the Ravens and Jaguars game. Not much to really cover here. It was a huge blowout. The Jaguars won 44-7. Joe Flacco struggled big time. He had less passing yards than the Jaguars had points. That's how bad of a game Joe Flacco had.
Yeah, not a very good game for the Elite Dragon.
Yeah, yeah, he didn't do great. Which was weird because Blake Bortles, who the league it just poops on that guy every day. He goes out and throws 4 touchdowns against a good defense.
Yeah, he was showing why he was picked so high in the draft by the Jaguars. Why they decided to take Blake Bortles as the first quarterback off the board.
Yeah.
His problem has been his consistency. He can't put it together week to week. He has games like this where he shows his potential and everybody thinks, wow, this guy could be a great starting quarterback for this franchise. He just if he could get it week to week, he would be great. The Jags, I'm sure, would sign him to a long-term deal, but it's just hopefully with the addition of Leonard Fournette and a strong running game, they can play to his strengths rather than relying on Bortles to throw garbage time touchdowns and yards every game.
Yep. Yeah, we do have to cut Bortles some slack because he has been asked to do a lot in his first couple years in the league. And I believe that puts both teams at 2-1.
Yeah.
You have the records written down.
Yeah,
I don't.
Both teams are at 2-1 right now. And I guess what my question is for you, do you think that the Ravens defense is legit, or do you think that we were tricked into thinking they were good because they played 2 mediocre teams to start the year off?
Yeah, I'm more on the side of that they're pretty legit, I think. But I did make the point before of that we need to take that with a grain of salt because they did play 2 bad teams to start the year. I mean, it was the Bengals and Browns?
Yes.
I think, yeah. I mean, when that's your first 2 games of the season, your defense should probably look pretty dominant,
For sure.
Especially when you got a rookie starting for the Browns and you've got a Bengals team that's basically lost on offense at this point. I mean, you got AJ Green, and what else do you have on that team? I mean, it's just they're trying to figure out what their identity is. So their defense should be looking good against those teams.
I think at the end of when all is said and done, they'll probably be in the upper half of defenses as far as
top 10
ranks go.
easily.
They still play really well on the defensive line, and their secondary is pretty good. I mean, they have some good playmakers back there. There's just not a lot you can do when your offense has a game like this where they cannot move the ball, and the only way they were getting any yards was to run the ball, and even that was not consistent. And they just can't. The defense can't be expected to win games that way for them. I think you're right. I think they are still a good defense. They're just they're going to struggle to keep points off the board if the offense can't get them past the 50-yard line.
Offense has to stay on the field. As Seahawks fans, we know from this season, defense is going to get tired if they're on the field all game.
All right, well, let's move on to the next game, Steelers versus Bears. This game was pretty surprising, actually. The final box score kind of looked like a post-merger box score, where the Bears end up with more rushing yards than passing yards by far. I think Glennon had 101 passing yards.
101,
versus almost 200 rushing yards between Cohen and Jordan Howard. The Bears, it's obvious that they do not trust Glennon to make plays throwing the ball. The only time he seems to be able to make any plays is if he has a clean pocket. Under pressure, to be honest, he's garbage. He can't make any plays under pressure. His limited athleticism is limiting him in his ability to get out of the pocket or make plays on the run. However, I mean, this potent running game is really showing up strong for the Bears, and I think it's gonna help them win some games this year for sure.
Well, definitely. I mean, especially when you have such a duo. I mean, it kind of reminds me of what they have in Atlanta, where you have the combination of Jordan Howard bringing the power, and then you have Tariq Cohen bringing in that finesse and that receiving ability.
Absolutely.
And
change of pace.
Yeah. I mean, that Bears backfield is really going to help them stay in games. The only issue is going to be, can that defense hold up? Which I think, I mean, based on how that defense is played, I think they can. Just because, I mean, the Steelers, to be fair, have been having troubles finding consistency offensively this year. I mean, you see Antonio Brown doing what he does.
Oh, yeah.
But other than that, I mean, they have not had any consistency on the offensive side of the ball, and that was what really killed them in this game.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see the Steelers O-line not hold up as well as we've seen in the last couple of years. The Bears defensive line, just from what I was watching, seemed to be getting manhandled by the Bears D line, and Ben Roethlisberger has said that he has been contemplating retirement. He's been teasing that for a couple of years, and you kind of wonder whether he's really going to be able to put up the numbers that he has outside of Antonio Brown.
Yeah,
it seems like Antonio Brown has been. I wouldn't say inflating his numbers, but I mean that's kind of what it seems like, because he's catching everything thrown his way, whether it's a good throw or not.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the elite talents. It reminds me a lot of how the situation with the Giants is with Odell Beckham Jr. and Eli Manning, where when Beckham isn't playing, that offense is stagnant. It doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
And I think that maybe we can jump into that game, being on that topic.
Sure.
We can talk about the Giants versus Eagles, because I don't think there's much more to say about the Steelers and Bears. It's, Bears win 23-17 in overtime.
Yeah, it was surprising, just because you would expect a team like the Steelers to beat the Bears. So this, I think, was probably the biggest upset of the week. Compared to the other games that were played this week, I think that was probably the most surprising. I did not expect the Steelers to come in to Chicago and lose. But let's move right along to the next game here.
Yeah, so we have Giants versus Eagles. The Eagles did win 27-24
on an amazing field goal by Jake Elliott.
Yeah, that's
61 yarder.
61 yards.
That's crazy.
You don't see that.
Yeah, that's the longest field goal in Eagles history.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't like. When's the last time we saw a 60-yarder? Was that Matt Prater?
I believe so.
I don't think we've seen. I know Justin Tucker does long ones. I don't know if he's done a 60.
I think he has. I don't know off the top of my head. We'd have to pull that up. But yeah, Elliott definitely came in the clutch there. The Eagles were just doing enough to stay in the game. Offensively, they weren't all that great, especially once Sproles left the game. That leaves a big hole in their production offensively. Even though he's in his 30s now, he's still a big part of that offense.
Yeah.
But the Eagles did enough to stay in the game. The Giants dropped to 0-3 now.
Yeah.
And the Eagles are sitting at 2-1. I think the biggest thing for the Giants is that they just do not have a running game.
None. It's non-existent. It really is.
Paul Perkins and Orleans Darkwa are not going to get it done for them. And their O-line is not that great to begin with, so they're heavily relying on Eli Manning to get the ball to these playmaking receivers, which we saw, 2 touchdowns from Beckham and a big day from Sterling Shepard.
Yep.
Eli Manning, overall, he played a pretty decent game. He had a couple of picks. Obviously, that's kind of what he does.
That is what he does.
He's going to throw a few touchdowns and a few picks. It's just what you have to expect out of him at this point. But yeah, Giants not looking so good. Hopefully they can turn it around and maybe make this division a little bit more competitive.
Yeah, and that's what that division needs more than anything right now, with how much the Cowboys, are praised for their dominance per se. It's you need, when you look at all those teams in the NFC East, you see talent on every single team.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and it showed in this game. I mean, the Eagles had a 14-point lead on the Giants, who have a good defense. Their defense is solid all around. Maybe take away maybe their linebackers, I'd say their defense is pretty elite. But then the Eagles couldn't score, gave up 21 unanswered, and the game played out from there.
Right.
But you see the talent in every single one of these NFC East games, and it makes that division just that much more exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely a division to watch because by week 16, all 4 of these teams could be in contention for the division championship.
Yeah.
All the Giants have to do is turn it around, see if they can find some kind of running room, and they'll be good from there. So let's move on to another game. I would like to talk about the Broncos and Bills game. The Broncos came in 1-1 or 2-0, excuse me.
Yep.
And the Bills were 1-1. Bills win 26-16, and the Broncos just struggled offensively to move the ball against a stout Bills defense.
Yeah, I mean, look, if the Bears upset wasn't the biggest upset, then this was. Because the Bills, I mean, if you watch those first 2 games that the Bills played, they were bad. I mean, they eked out a win, but they were bad. And I was not expecting them to score more than 1 touchdown in this game. I was just like, that's not going to happen. Against the Broncos defense that had been shutting down whoever they played those first 2 games.
Especially after seeing them shut down the Cowboys like they did.
Oh, yeah.
I fully expected a team like the Bills, who are built somewhat offensively, to match what the Cowboys are doing. You know that they're going to run the football. You just have to stop them. And the Broncos, I think they were just a little bit cocky coming off a win against the
Cowboys.
Yeah. Trevor Siemian, the first 2 games, he was playing really well. He looked like he was going to have a stellar year this year if he kept his pace. I think he just got a little too comfortable and a little too complacent, and he was making some errant throws on the field. He did not seem to be making great decisions, and the Bills shut down that running game for the most part. I mean, Anderson didn't get a whole lot of yards, no touchdowns, only 8 carries, and then Jamal Charles he had the best day offensively. He had a touchdown and
9 carries for I think 58 yards on the day.
Yeah, so Jamal Charles had a pretty good game, but they needed a passing game to get into that game towards the end, and they just couldn't get it done. I just don't think that they were really focused. I think that they thought they would come in and beat on the Bills, no problem. But Tyrod played well against that secondary that was playing kind of complacent. He played really well. I think he had 6 incompletions, no turnovers.
I think the big thing for him was that he was efficient with the ball. It wasn't just him making big plays. It was him, like you said, only having like 6 incompletions. That's what you have to do against the Broncos. That's how teams beat the Seahawks back when they had like 2013 when we went to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's how teams beat. It's like I think the Chargers beat the Seahawks that year just by doing short passes, getting completions, moving the ball, high percentage throws. That's what you have to do against the Broncos too. So it's too early to say that, Simeon's not going to have a good season. I mean, it was one game.
Sure.
I think that was a little bit of a wake-up call for the Broncos in general. I still see them finishing. I mean, that division is so good in general that who knows where they're going to finish, but just with the talent that team has, I think they're going to be fine. This game isn't really something to worry about that much.
Right. I mean, they're out of division playing against the Bills. It really, if they had dropped a game like this against an in-division rival, then I could definitely see how this might be a more important loss. However, since it's against a team that's not in the same division, I'm not all too worried about it. I think the Broncos will be just fine, and we'll see how they end the year. Okay, so let's see. Let's go to another game. Why don't we just quickly touch over the Saints and Panthers game? Not really a whole lot going on in this game. I mean, you see Breeze still has it. Obviously, he knows how to take advantage of the teams within his division, and he knows how to play to their weaknesses. And on the flip side of that, Cam Newton does apparently not know how to take advantage of suspect defense. I don't know what's going on with him this year, but he has not been playing well at all.
I think that personally, I think that Super Bowl loss really got him. I mean, it's that loss against the Broncos, he was getting destroyed in that game. And just ever since then, he has been off, and he has battled some injuries. I think coming off of shoulder surgery coming into this year, I think. So I guess we can cut him some slack, but I mean, he's not playing to the level that a starting quarterback needs to be playing at. I mean, when you're throwing for like 167 yards, I think, and 3 interceptions for the entire game.
Yeah, and on a team that has playmakers. I mean,
absolutely.
Kelvin Benjamin is a pretty solid receiver. I mean, it's hard to say because, like we've said, Cam Newton seems to be struggling right now with his ball placement. But, I mean, Christian McCaffrey has obviously been very good for them so far. And even guys under the radar, guys like Curtis Samuel, he had a rush for 31 yards. Yep. They know how to draw up the plays to get the ball into the playmakers' hands. It's just about how effective Cam Newton can be. Yeah. I hope he turns it around, because when he's playing well, he's a really exciting player to watch.
Oh yeah,
and I would love to see him doing well for the Panthers. But right now he's just not getting it done.
Yeah, and that's really all there is to that game. I mean, Drew Brees picks him apart. Cam Newton plays bad, and that's kind of the end of the story there.
Saints go 1-2 now, and Panthers are at 2-1. So the Saints finally get their first win on the board.
Yep, and that was one that they needed for sure. I want to move on to a game that is maybe a little bit more interesting. The Falcons versus the Lions.
Yes.
That game.
Very fun game to watch.
Yeah. Just to kind of recap it, the Falcons took an early lead, but Matt Ryan's 3 interceptions let the Lions get back into the game, including 1 pick six from Glover Quinn. Then you have Stafford leading that comeback, but...
As he usually does.
As he does. We all know that he does that. But they lose it on the last play of the game in what was a pretty controversial play call.
Very strange, yeah. I don't necessarily agree with the play call itself. You want to get the ball to the best player on your team, and which is what they did. They threw the ball to Golden Tate, hoping that he can make something happen. He's been, as far as receivers go, he's definitely one of the best at breaking tackles.
Yes.
All he had to do is get a few yards after the catch, and he would have been fine. It was just a good defensive play by the Falcons to get him before he was able to cross the goal line.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the issue with the play call was that it was very predictable, and that's why I think the Falcons were able to read it pretty well. I mean, I think they had like 3 receivers out, and they had a pick play basically for him to come. Yes. And like so many teams have ran that. I mean, you see the Saints do it almost on a weekly basis. It's a pretty predictable play at this point. And then when you caught the ball, well, it's up to your interpretation, but based on what the ref said, it wasn't a touchdown. They stopped him short, and so the Lions lose that game 30-26. I mean, I don't know what else really there is.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, especially Lions fans, are going to be upset with the way the game ends because nobody wants to end the game on a penalty with a 10-second runoff to lose the game, especially when you're that close to coming back to seal the victory. It hurts. Even as a someone who's not a fan of the Lions, like it hurts to see that happen because you want to give your team the best chance they can to win. You want to give them the chance to make the play, and then to see it get reviewed with a 10-second running clock and then the game ends, I can see how that would be upsetting. I personally thought Golden Tate was just short of the goal line. I thought I think his knee hit the ground before he reached the goal line. Still a great effort by Golden Tate to try to make it happen, and a great effort by Matt Stafford to try to get that win.
Just to kind of end the recap on this game, if there's one thing that I'm worried about for the Falcons, kind of stems back to the Super Bowl last year. The Falcons are having a really hard time finishing games. They are getting leads in the first half, and they're not putting the game away. And they consistently are coming into these close games in the fourth quarter. That's something I would worry about as a Falcons fan. I mean, it's really that is something that I worry about, and that I hope that they can figure out. So,
yeah. So the Falcons go to 3-0, and the Lions drop to 2-1. The Lions seem to be doing pretty good this year. Hopefully they can string together some more wins and compete for a wild card spot this year. I think that they have the potential to do that. If they can find a way to run the ball more effectively, I think that, and have a more balanced offense, I think they'll be just fine. Their defense seems to be coming on pretty well. Their secondary is making plays, and the defensive line is getting pressure on the quarterback. That's all you can ask.
Yeah, and that running game is definitely holding them back for sure. They need to work on that. But to move to a game where one of the teams has a great running game that's not holding them back at all, actually. Let's go to Vikings versus Bucks. We had a Vikings victory, 34-17. The Vikings dominated this game.
Oh, absolutely.
The final score, they won by 2 scores, or a little over 2 scores, double the score of the Bucks. And honestly, it felt like even more than that because the Vikings came in with a backup quarterback in Case Keenum, who's no slouch.
Definitely one of the better backups in this league, for sure.
Absolutely.
Spot starter.
But, I mean, we've seen him play. He doesn't normally put up 300-plus yards and, 3 touchdowns?
Yeah, and I think he had less than 10 incompletions too. So he definitely seems to be meshing, especially with his top receivers, Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. In the early game, you see a beautiful touch pass to Adam Thielen. I think it was like a 45-yard play. Drops it right in front of him. It was great. It was a really good throw. And then all game long, he was on it with Diggs, who ended up with 170 plus yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, Diggs had a huge game.
I think the emergence of Dalvin Cook as a legit running back in this offense has really helped out Case Keenum in these couple of weeks that he's going to be starting.
Yep.
Their offensive line has been vastly improved from last year. It was probably harder to get worse than TJ Clemmings.
Yeah.
But they have improved their line, and it's showing up in the running game stats for sure. I'm just excited to see what this team can do with a healthy Bradford.
Yeah, this team with a healthy Bradford, definitely scary for the NFC.
Bridgewater's also supposed to be coming back after week 6.
Yeah, we're going to see what happens with that. I'm not convinced that they're going to have Bridgewater come in and start. I think Bradford has that job right now.
Yeah, I would say so too. As far as the Bucs go, it was actually just kind of a normal game for the Bucs.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jameis Winston constantly struggles with his turnovers.
Yep.
That's the thing. He's while he's more of a prototypical passer, he also seems to be more of a gunslinger who's going to let it go and hope that his guys will come down with the ball. And unfortunately, that leads to a lot of turnovers. I think he had 3 picks, and they also can't get a running game going right now without Doug Martin, especially against stout defense for the Vikings.
Vikings are solid.
They definitely probably didn't expect to run the ball as much. I'm sure they hope to be a little bit more effective, though. And ultimately, those turnovers are going to kill you in a game where you're going against an opportunistic defense like the Vikings and an offense that has shown it can score some points off turnovers. Absolutely.
It's the Bucs. There was some obvious frustration on the sideline. We saw it with Mike Evans. He was very frustrated on the sidelines talking with Jameis Winston. It's that team has a lot of issues they need to work out, and specifically Jameis Winston needs to get those turnovers under control, learn to throw it away, and learn to take a sack if he has to.
Yes, I would agree with you there. So moving on to the next game we have, I'm going to talk about the Texans and Patriots, which was a fun game to watch.
Absolutely.
Patriots ultimately won 36-33. Drops the Texans down to 1-2, and the Patriots are at 2-1, with their only loss being against the opener against the Chiefs.
Yep.
I think what I was most impressed with in this game was Deshaun Watson. Watching him come in his second start and really seem to grasp the offense better than any of the quarterbacks that Bill O'Brien has had. Over the last couple of years.
And there's not really much to compare to when you're looking at Brock Osweiler, Tom Savage, like T.J. Yates. I mean, it's just they haven't had a lot there for quarterbacks in general. But I agree. I think Deshaun Watson has brought an exciting factor. He did make a few mistakes in the game with, I think, 2 picks.
Yes.
But he's a rookie. And you know what? When he has 2 picks, but he also has 2 touchdowns, 200-plus yards against a Patriots team that's very good and has been good for the last pretty much 20 years. I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was great to see him come in and show his understanding of the offense. I mean, this game was, in just his second start, better than, I think, any game that Osweiler had all year last year.
Yeah. That's for sure.
You see him getting the ball to his playmakers. You see him getting the ball to DeAndre Hopkins, who is by far their best offensive player.
Yeah, definitely.
And if they I think he adds an element into their rushing game where he's also a threat to run. He's not always going to run. It's not his first option, but they do seem to design plays for him to use his legs and get out into space and use that middle of the field that opens up from stretch plays by the running backs. So the Texans, I think, towards the end of the year will have an exciting offense. I think once Deshaun Watson gets a little bit more comfortable into that scheme and they start adding more plays into the playbook, I think you could see them start to maybe put together a solid offense to make a push for that division title.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to just overshadow the Patriots in this game. So
Sure.
I will say Tom Brady took over this game completely.
As he does.
I mean, that's what he does. 5 touchdowns. I mean, it's just the dude's in his 40s. Throws 5 touchdowns.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and it's with a semi-depleted receiving core. I mean, and he's having to rely on a couple of guys that you wouldn't expect him to really rely on as much. But he's able to rely on Gronk, Brandon Cooks, Chris Hogan. And they really stepped up in this game against a good Texans defense. I mean,
the Texans defense is definitely one of the better defenses in the league. Definitely, I would say a top 5 defense.
Yeah.
But when you're going up against Tom Brady, it really doesn't matter how good your defense is. He will find a way to exploit it. And you saw his report with Cooks starting to develop. The first couple games, there were some overthrows by Brady as he was maybe overestimating Brandon Cooks' speed.
Yes, that's been happening frequently, actually.
But, this game, they really came on board together. Cooks had, I think, 145 yards and a touchdown on just a few receptions. He's definitely the most talented receiver they've had since Randy Moss, in my opinion. As far as being a true number 1 receiver goes, I think Brandon Cooks is the most talented receiver they've had.
Yeah, and that's not to discredit Julian Edelman, but Edelman is more of a slot guy.
Much more of a slot guy, a possession guy, whereas Brandon Cooks, he can do it all, and he's an elite field stretcher. He's gonna be a guy that's gonna require help over the top. And that's opening up the middle for these crossing routes by Danny Amendola and Chris Hogan.
Yep.
All of these guys are getting these chunk plays underneath because the defense really has to respect the deep ball that Cooks brings to that offense. So look for the Patriots to roll again in the coming weeks. They look just as good as ever. If anything, their defense is a little bit suspect, but when Brady's tossing 5 touchdowns a game, not a whole lot the defense can do to really impact the game otherwise.
Yeah, you're really going to have to match him touchdown for touchdown if you want any sort of chance to beat the Patriots. To move on to a game where it was not as exciting, you have the Dolphins and the Jets.
Yeah.
I'll start this one off saying I was not expecting the Jets to win this game, but I wasn't exactly surprised that happened. Simply because this was a matchup between 2 teams that are not very good. Dolphins have talent. I'm not completely sold on the fact that Jay Cutler is going to save this team, though. I think that I think he is a better option than maybe Matt Moore is, but it's still Jay Cutler, right? I mean, it's
they're trying to be competitive, and if they were going to compete this year, it was not going to be with Matt Moore.
No.
He's great if you need him to start a game or 2, like that's great, but a whole season, they definitely needed somebody else, and bringing in Cutler was probably their best option next to Colin Kaepernick, who doesn't seem to want or be no team seems to want him, but either way, the whole Dolphins offense just seemed to struggle. I guess all I can really say about this game, because I really don't care for either team, to be completely honest, I have no bone in this fight. The Jets won't go 0-16 though, so we can stop talking about that. I would like to talk about the Bengals and Packers game.
Yeah.
next. That ended up being somewhat of an exciting game. Bengals scored 24 points, and the Packers scored 27 to win the game in overtime. Bengals dropped to 0-3. Packers are at 2-1, and man, the Bengals just could not hold on after they had a good start. They had a good start to this game, put up some points, but unfortunately, they just have no offensive talent behind AJ Green. They're really relying on some young guys to make plays, like Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon. These guys who are just coming into the league,
Yep.
and behind an offensive line that is drastically worse than it was last year.
Yeah,
it's going to be
definitely.
hard for the Bengals to put up any consistency on offense.
Especially when you lose guys like Andrew Whitworth and Kevin Zeitler off that line.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's really gonna hurt you. There's
And then
only
and now we're watching Whitworth play fantastic with the Rams.
Oh, yeah.
He's been a huge improvement for them over Greg Robinson.
yeah, he has made a huge impact there, and it just goes to show how much of an impact he had for the Bengals. Because that team is kind of a disaster right now. I really don't see them. I said this in preseason. I didn't see them having a good year at all. People were talking about the Jets, and I said that if the Jets aren't the worst, I think the Bengals are going to be the worst. And so far, that's kind of happening.
Yeah, it's crazy to see a team that has a guy like AJ Green and Andy Dalton, who I personally think can be a solid quarterback if you have the right scheme around him and the right talent around him. It's just hard to get anything done when your O-line is garbage and you have no other options behind AJ Green. So, I can definitely see them dropping quite a few more games this year.
Yep.
I would love to see the Browns win more games than the Bengals, just because I think that would be fantastic. And I think the writing's on the wall for Marvin Lewis. I think if he, unfortunately, if he isn't able to turn this team around, I think they're going to have to let him go unless he has some kind of blackmail on the owners to keep him in the building. They've already fired their offensive coordinator. And while they put up some points this week, which is a good sign, I don't know if it's going to be enough.
Yeah, it's good to see them have points, but I mean, they did run into a team like the Packers where Aaron Rodgers does what he does and, ends up taking them for the win. I mean, that's what he does.
Yep.
But to move on from that game, we have next I want to go into the Chiefs and Chargers because this is a pretty quick one. Not really a whole lot to say here. It's the Chiefs looking great like they have in these first 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Kareem Hunt has been a huge lift for this offense. He broke off another long run of 69 yards to really put this game away. It was stuck at 17-10 for the longest time, and then he just broke off that run to just really put it away. Philip Rivers struggled heavily in this game, especially early on, throwing 3 picks. I mean, it's just they couldn't get
to Terrence Mitchell.
Yeah, 2 of them to our boy Terrence Mitchell from
Good
Oregon. I mean, it's just you can't do that and expect to win. That's it. I mean, it's just like we were talking about with Cam Newton. It's just too many turnovers. Same with Jameis Winston.
You're putting your defense in a bad spot where they have to suddenly defend only half the field, or they're not getting a good field position, and unfortunately, it's leading to the Chargers dropping their first 3 games. The Chiefs, however, have won their first 3 games, looking great in all of them. So I don't know. I feel like the Chiefs so far through these first 3 games look like the strongest team in the AFC.
And maybe even the strongest team in the league. I mean, just look at how they're playing. Alex Smith, I guess drafting Mahomes really woke him up or something because he is
contract year.
He has been on fire this year. I mean, that team is looking scary, and we'll see how it plays out the rest of the season. But this team right now, barring injuries, is going to make a run for that AFC Championship game.
Yeah, I could definitely see an AFC Championship game between the Chiefs and Pats, or something like that. I would love to see these teams battle it out again at the end of the year.
Yeah.
To see what kind of changes Belichick could make, and Andy Reid. I think they're both great coaches in this league. So the Chiefs are definitely looking great, and they're actually fun to watch.
Yeah.
Seeing Alex Smith push the ball more than 5 yards down the field has been awesome to watch.
Absolutely.
It's like watching him grow as a quarterback. Seeing him take those deep shots has been really the element that this Chiefs team needed.
Yeah.
They needed the ball to go farther down the field rather than just relying on small dink and dunk plays every here and there. They really needed a big time playmaking ability at the quarterback position. So I think that he's improved, and I think any team that has him next year would be happy to have him.
Yeah, and I'm hoping he stays with the Chiefs, if I'm being honest. I like him on the Chiefs, but we'll see where he ends up.
Yeah. So staying kind of in the same division, we can talk about the Raiders and Redskins game. That was a surprise to most of us, actually. Seeing the Raiders uncharacteristically struggling on offense. They come in as a very potent offense. You know that their top two receivers are going to make plays all game long, and that Marshawn Lynch is going to keep your defense honest. So it was interesting to see them struggle against Redskins team who has a solid defense, only able to put up 10 points to the Redskins 27. But, I mean, Cousins is just increasing his paycheck next year, man. Watching him make these plays that he's making and having games like this is what's going to make him the highest paid quarterback in the league next year.
Yeah, I can definitely see that happening. And that's not saying that Kirk Cousins is the best quarterback in the league. But he is in a time where every contract just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It wouldn't be surprising to see him get a massive deal going into the off season.
Yeah, I mean, quarterbacks, especially ones that can play at the level that Cousins plays at, they are a very rare commodity, and teams are willing to pay absurd amounts of money for a quarterback who can play as consistent as Kirk Cousins can.
Absolutely.
I would like to give a shout out to Chris Thompson, though, because I'm glad this guy is healthy now, because he has shown to be probably the most dynamic running back they have by far.
Absolutely.
Not much of a in-between the tackles kind of guy. He's definitely known for his receiving prowess, as seen by his receptions this week for like 150 yards.
Only on like 6 receptions.
Yeah, so he's, that is adding an element to the Redskins team that they desperately needed. It's also been good to see Josh Doxson really come into what he was drafted to do, which was to be a big-bodied guy.
Yep.
There was a highlight that he had where Kirk Cousins throws him a 50-50 ball, and he goes up and makes the catch and runs it in. So it was really good to see him do that. Hopefully he can keep making plays like that, because they desperately need some help at the wide receiver position after losing Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson to free agency.
Yeah, they have definitely been struggling, especially with Jordan Reed so kind of injured off and on. They don't know what they're going to be able to, if he's even going to suit up week in and week out. They need people that can go up and get those 50-50 balls. And with the rapport between Cousins and Terrell Pryor not quite there yet, it's good to have a guy like Doxson there. It's good to have a guy like Jamison Crowder there.
Yeah.
You need players like that can go up and get the ball, especially when Jordan Reed is out. As far as the Raiders go, I don't see this kind of flop happening often.
No, this was definitely, I think, a one-off. I don't know if they just weren't prepared, or I'm not sure what it is that caused them to struggle like this, but I definitely see them bouncing back in the next few weeks. I don't think that they're going to put up very many performances like this.
Absolutely not. And especially with, it was off for Lynch, it was off for Carr. It was off for the whole team. I don't see that continuing. much longer.
Nope. Raiders dropped to 2-1, and Redskins are up to 2-1. A lot of 2-1 teams around the league. It doesn't seem like there's. I mean, the only teams that are 3-0, we got the Chiefs and Atlanta. So it doesn't look like any team is and both. I mean, aside from the Chiefs, the Falcons have shown some weaknesses in their game. The Chiefs haven't really shown much, so we'll see when they drop their first game. I think Atlanta will ultimately drop one before them, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will definitely see what happens as the weeks go by. Going into, I guess we can cover the Browns and Colts game really quick. Look, I don't think anyone was expecting this game to be anything crazy. You have two teams that have been struggling pretty hard a bit, but I mean, one of them had to win. So
yeah, I mean, one team is in rebuild mode, and the other one is in seems to be like falling apart mode.
Yeah.
When you unfortunately, the Colts without Andrew Luck are just about on the same level as the Browns are.
Yes.
Jacoby Brissett has been a good addition for them to be at least somewhat more competitive than obviously they would have been with Scott Tolzien.
Yeah, he was bad.
But the fact of the matter is they still only won by 3 points
against the Browns.
Who are an intriguing team because of their rebuild. They have some good pieces there. I think their team is just too young right now to really compete at a high level where they're going to win these closely contested games. Deshaun Kaiser is still very raw. He has shown a lot of really good ability. I've actually been really impressed watching him play. I didn't think he would be playing this well at this point in the season. But he did have a couple of turnovers, and I mean, that's kind of what you can expect from a rookie quarterback coming into a situation where Kenny Britt is your number one receiver. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of room to make some plays. So we'll see how they are next year. This isn't really the Browns' year. They dropped to 0-3. The Colts are at 1-2. I think the Colts are lucky to get this win. I don't see them winning very many games, if any, until Andrew Luck comes back. So we'll see them. We'll see what they're able to do in the coming weeks, and we can move on from that into a game I would really not like to talk about as a Hawks fan. So the Hawks playing against the Titans. Hawks score 27 and the Titans score 33, but do not let that final score throw you off. This game was dominated by the Titans for the first 3 quarters.
Absolutely.
Marcus Mariota was doing a great job taking care of the ball, really playing to the weakness of this defense, which is these short plays.
Yep.
The Hawks all year have been struggling against the short passing game and on third down. On third down, if it's less than 8 yards against the Seahawks right now, it seems like you're able to convert. I don't know what it is. I don't know what their issue is. If they're just scared of giving up big plays or what it is. But unfortunately, the way they're playing on defense is allowing teams to gradually rack up the score, and it's not a winning formula right now for the Hawks.
And I think the big thing is that the Seahawks on offense cannot move the ball. There is absolutely no consistency on the offensive side of the ball.
They have no identity.
There is no, and so much of that has to do, and everyone knows it has to do with the offensive line. It seems like that's been the story these last 3 years has just been, the offensive line is bad. Let's see how it goes. And then halfway through the season, it gels enough for the Seahawks to go on a run and get in the playoffs. But then the playoffs hit, and the line just can't keep up.
Well, right. I mean, you go up against any team that's in the playoffs. Those are the top teams in the league, and the Hawks are gonna struggle on offense because of that O-line. I mean, even when Russell Wilson has time to throw the ball, he's seeing ghosts out there, man. Mm-hmm. He's unable to hit or connect on those long plays because he's so scared of getting hit. It seems like. I mean, obviously, I'm not in his head. I can't see, but what's going on in there. But you can tell just from a fan perspective, he is not comfortable in the pocket. He's bailing out before the line even breaks down sometimes.
Yep.
And it's just really hard as a Hawks fan to watch this offensive team. They cannot seem to. I don't know if Pete Carroll is loyal to a fault or if Tom Cable has nudes of John Schneider, but they will not fire him, even though it is completely obvious that the offensive line is the root of our struggles. He's not, of course, the only person to blame for the offensive struggles. Darrell Bevell has been very underwhelming as a coordinator. You would hope to have seen some growth over the last few years from him and maybe some better adaptation skills, and we have not seen that.
Yeah, it's been hard to watch this team struggle and continue to struggle and not make the required adjustments. Pretty much on a yearly basis, it happens.
Yeah.
But I really do want to say that if anything, this game shows that the Titans are legit.
Oh yeah,
that team with Mariota healthy. I mean, you see the dynamic with him on the field and DeMarco Murray running the ball. And then you get spelled and take a break and have a guy like Derrick Henry come in.
Yeah.
That is just such a powerhouse of an offense. And then you add Eric Decker, you add Corey Davis, you still have Delaney Walker and Rashard Matthews. That team is loaded on offense.
Oh, yeah, that team is vastly improved. The addition of Eric Decker has been great for the Titans. You don't have to rely on Rashard Matthews to be your number one receiver anymore. You can really work him where he works best, which is as a number 2 or a number 3 guy.
Yep.
The Titans are really putting some pieces together. I think that they are turning into playoff contenders very quickly. If they can just solidify their defense a little bit more, especially in the secondary, they will be contenders in the AFC. I think that they could come out as the strongest team in the AFC South. Or I'm sorry, are they in the AFC South?
Yes.
Yeah, AFC South. I think they could come out as the clear-cut contender, especially if the Texans keep dropping games like they are.
And especially with the Colts and Jaguars struggling to maintain any sort of consistency and win games, the Titans are definitely the front runners with that beastly offensive line and just overall great offense. They should be able to take that division. And that leaves us with the Monday night game as our last game to cover. We have the Cowboys versus the Cardinals. In this game, I was able to, because we can't watch every game. A lot of it is just, what we can catch from highlights and just as much as we can see and understand from the stats. And we'll watch the play-by-play on Sundays and just try to get a feel of how things went. This game, I was able to catch the entire third quarter of after watching some of the play-by-play and everything. And I can tell you, this Cowboys team is not necessarily, it's not bad on offense, but the explosiveness isn't there yet. There were a couple of plays. You had Ezekiel Elliott burst out with this 30-yard rush, and you had a great effort on the touchdown from Dez Bryant. Mm-hmm. But aside from those 2 plays, there was a real lack of just any explosiveness from the team. It was a lot of just stagnant little kind of deke and dunk nonsense, and you have all these weapons on that team, and I'm here wondering when we're going to see that truly flourish, because I don't know how many more games they're going to win with Dak only throwing 180 yards.
Yeah. The Cowboys have not changed since last year. They are the same scheme. Their scheme is very predictable. It's going to be we're going to run the ball at you 30 times a game.
Yeah.
And if you can stop it, you might be able to win. And teams are figuring this out. They know that if they can stop the run against the Cowboys and force Prescott to make plays with his arm, they have a better chance of winning the game. You saw the Broncos do just that. They left their corners on an island with Terrence Williams and Des Bryant, and they just let them cover them all game while they focused on the run game, and they shut the Cowboys down. The Cardinals unfortunately don't have the same talent on defense as the Broncos do to really execute a game plan like that.
Right.
So they weren't able to stop the Cowboys from scoring points. The Cowboys scored 28, the Cards 17. The thing that is killing the Cardinals right now is the lack of running game. Unfortunately, with David Johnson going out for the year, or at least until probably come late in the year, maybe playoffs.
Week 14, maybe at the earliest.
That's what they're saying. Yeah. They're really relying on Carson Palmer to make plays with his arm, which the first couple of games was not working out for them. However, this game, I actually thought that Palmer looked better.
This was definitely a vintage performance from both him and Larry Fitzgerald. They both they looked like their old 2015 selves.
Yes.
Where they went was it 14-2? No, it was 13-3. I think they went that year. I mean
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
12-4 though.
Either way, they had a great year in 2015, and this game reminded me of how they played back then. The biggest difference was that now their defense has lost a lot of pieces. I think the loss of Calais Campbell was huge, especially when you see how he's playing for Jacksonville. You don't really have a lot of help there, and like you said, with the lack of running game, he has no help there. I mean, Chris Johnson, he's 31 now. I mean,
I'm sure he's trying as hard as he can, but there's just not a lot left in his tank. And the other running backs they have on roster, Kerwin Williams and Andre Ellington, who has been moved to a hybrid receiver role.
Right.
They just the three of them combined is not going to replace what the one David Johnson can bring.
Yes.
Unfortunately, with him out, I don't see them really competing this year for much of anything. I think this is going to be Carson Palmer's last year, and it could possibly be Larry Fitzgerald's last year too. I can't imagine how it must feel to be him staying with that franchise and missing the playoffs or missing a chance to go to another Super Bowl after so many years. I mean, he's, I think, 34 now.
Yeah, I think he's 34.
And he's still putting up monster games like this because he has such an understanding of the game and so much experience, and he's still a great competitor.
Yep.
But I don't think that the Cards will be competitive. So, I mean, what do you think? If you're in the Cardinals boat, would you be trying to tank for maybe a higher draft pick, or are you gonna try to be competitive for the whole season and see what you can get out of it?
I think if I'm in that position, I think it's too early to say to tank in week 3. I don't think any team necessarily needs to tank at week 3. Maybe save the Browns, and the Jets typically. But I mean, I don't think any team wants to tank. I think everyone wants to win. They wouldn't be professionals if they wanted to go in and lose.
Well, for sure.
I think the Cardinals still have a shot to be competitive solely because they're in a division that has a lot of question marks. Yes, they have their own question marks, but so does every team in that division. I mean, the Rams are looking like the best team at this point in the division,
right?
And that's just weird to see. It's after so many 7-9, 8-8 seasons, it's kind of strange to see that. So I don't think it's necessarily tanking time for them, but they certainly have issues they need to address.
Yeah, good times, man. Good times. NFC West is now like a shell of its former self, man.
No kidding. It's just in a couple of years.
Well, that kind of wraps up all of our recaps for last week's games. I mean, I guess now we can look to the Week 4 matchups, and then talk about some stuff there, some stuff we're going to look forward to there. So we're going to start Week 4 off on Thursday night with the Bears going to Lambeau Field to take on Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I really just think that the Packers are going to win this game. They're looking much stronger than the Bears. Unless the Bears can somehow run the football like they did against the Steelers, I don't see them really staying in this game. I could definitely see Aaron Rodgers piling up the points against the suspect secondary from the Bears.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Packers win this game pretty handily, although I do see if the Bears can play against the Packers like they did the Steelers, I could see this game being closer than we may think.
For sure. Next up, we have the Colts at the Seahawks. As a Hawks fan, I would very much like to see them win this game. If they're unable to put it together and win against the Colts, there are big problems in
Absolutely.
Seattle. This should be a game that we win against an inexperienced quarterback with Jacoby Brissett. They have some playmaking wide receivers. However, the lack of run game by the Colts, or at least consistent run game,
Right.
should be in the Seahawks' favor. But in the National Football League, you never know. I thought the Seahawks would start 3-0 and would have start having a great year. Maybe I was a little homer biased, but I would really like to see the Seahawks win this game. And if they do, I think it'll be close. I don't think that there's going to be a blowout. I hope I'm proven wrong, but just from what we've seen on offense by the Seahawks so far, I think this is going to be an ugly game. I don't think it's going to be a very fun game to watch.
No, and honestly, my big thing for that one is simply if Doug Baldwin plays and Vontae Davis misses this game, I could see the Seahawks pulling away by probably the third quarter, I think. They should. However, if Doug Baldwin does not play in this game and Vontae Davis does make this game is definitely, like you said, going to be close, and it's going to be ugly. Because the Seahawks, and you saw Russell Wilson rely heavily on Doug Baldwin in the game against the Titans. That's something they are obviously going to have to work on, and we'll see what the Colts bring to Seattle at home. Moving from that, we do have the Saints visiting the Dolphins.
I could see this going a lot like the game against the Panthers. I think that Drew Brees has shown that he's still capable of putting points up on the board against less than, or if he's able to put up points against the Panthers, I could really see him putting up some points against a Dolphins defense that definitely has some question marks in the secondary.
Yep.
And but I mean, who knows? We could get 2 interception Jay Cutler, or we could get 3 touchdowns and no pick Cutler. Who knows?
Yeah, and then the same goes for Drew Brees. He does have every now and then in a game where we come in and we expect him to light it up and throw for like 7 touchdowns. He'll throw for maybe 1, and he'll throw for like 150 yards and like 2 picks. I mean, sometimes that happens, so we'll see what happens with this game. I see it going both ways, but I think the Saints end up winning this game by at least 10 points.
Yeah, I could see that as well. Next up, Bills against the Falcons. Yeah, I don't think we're going to disagree on some of these. I think the Falcons are definitely the superior team. Bills seem to be in middle of a rebuild mode, trading away some of their cornerstone players so they can acquire some draft picks or some different players and maybe change their identity, maybe wait for Tom Brady to hopefully retire so they can be competing in that division. But right now is not their time. The Falcons, I think, are gonna win against the Bills, especially at home. I don't think the Bills are going to be able to come into Atlanta and surprise them. I think the Falcons will be ready. I think Dan Quinn is going to put a solid game plan together against the Bills to stop that potent running attack.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think the Falcons' offense is too explosive for that Bills defense. Moving on to a game that we may disagree with. Steelers going to the Ravens. I personally see the Ravens winning this game.
Really?
Yes.
Even after getting blown out by the Jaguars?
Even after getting blown out by the Jaguars. And here is why. And I don't necessarily like this argument a lot of the time. But with this specific rivalry, it happens every time. Every time these games are competitive and they're close. And I say every time I can remember.
Sure.
I'm sure there have been blowouts here and there. But listen, this Ravens team is good against the run. That's what they're known for. The Steelers have been relying heavily on a Le'Veon Bell workload that the Ravens are going to be trying hard to stop. And if they can contain, you're not going to stop Antonio Brown, just like you're not going to stop Julio Jones and Odell Beckham Jr. But if you can contain them, I see the Ravens having a shot here, especially with Steelers defense. They got a good front seven. They still have question marks in the secondary. Their corners are young, not completely proven at this point. I think that if Joe Flacco can just be more efficient than 8 for whatever and 28 yards, I think this game is a lot closer.
I see what you're saying with the rivalry. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the Steelers are just the far superior team. You mentioned question marks in the secondary, but Artie Burns, while being young as he has played well. William Gay is not a slouch. I think he plays pretty well. And Joe Hayden has actually been playing pretty well in the nickel role in 3 cornerback spots. I think he's been playing well in the limited time he's gotten. He seems to bring a veteran presence to that defense. The Ravens just don't have any playmakers on offense, especially I'm pretty sure Jeremy Maclin was injured in that game and will be questionable for this game, if I remember correctly. If he's not able to play this game, I mean, their number one receiver is going to be like Chris Matthews.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they'll probably have Brashad Perriman and Mike Wallace in those spots before Chris Matthews.
Maybe. But either way, I see the Ravens maybe not letting so many points build up on them, but I don't think they're going to be able to score very many points against a Steelers defense that is going to be looking to bounce back this week and focus primarily on the run game, which is the maybe only strength that the Ravens have. But I guess we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Bengals at Browns is going to be a shit show.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too.
I'm not going to. I don't plan on watching that game. No. I'll watch some highlights.
If there are any. There's probably going to be one AJ Green catch somewhere in there that's a highlight.
Ridiculous, yeah. Especially with Joe Hayden gone.
Yep.
The AJ Green killer.
Yep.
Not much to say about that game. Rams at Cowboys will be an intriguing game to watch.
Yeah, I guess we should say, if we're going to pick a winner, I'm going to say the Bengals.
I think the Browns squeak out the win. Honestly, yeah, I think the Bengals are falling apart at the seams, and the Browns are looking upwards. I think the Browns get their first win of the year, and the Bengals fall to 0-4. Personally,
yeah, I think it's a toss up. I picked the Bengals just because I think they have, I guess, more consistency, a little bit more stability, just with the connection between AJ Green and Andy Dalton alone. Deshaun Kaiser is still working out the kinks. I see it going either way, but there's not much to say about that one. So You were saying, going into the Rams and Cowboys game, this really is going to be, I think, one of the biggest games of the week, just with where these teams are. Currently, the Rams, they've shown these flashes, but it has been against some pretty suspect defenses. This is going to be a great test to see what they do against teams that can truly compete with them. Because the Cowboys, we know, don't have like a crazy good defense.
No.
But the Cowboys know how to use their offense to control the clock and keep other teams off the field while they just keep just bashing into them over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I really like what the Rams are doing on offense. They really seem to be putting it together offensively, where they couldn't do it with Jeff Fisher. Jeff Fisher is just not the coach for an offense that I'm sure the Rams hoped he would be.
Yeah.
I mean, give credit to him for helping that transition to LA. I thought that was great. I'm sure they told him that they planned to move on to another coach at some point in the future because they want to start a new identity. You know, they drafted the local boy Jared Goff. They had plans, I think, to make room for a new offensive head coach, offensive-minded head coach, and it seems to have worked for them so far. The Cowboys, you're right, will be a good test for them. However, I think the Rams defense matches up very well against the Cowboys.
Yes.
Dak Prescott is going to be forced to make plays with his arm, and hopefully leave some room for Zeke to really do some damage on the ground, which is going to be hard against a very stout front seven from the Rams. So we'll see how that game goes. I personally think the Rams will win this game. Just from seeing what I've seen from them so far, offensively, I think they have a good game plan. Jared Goff has looked very accurate, and Todd Gurley has shown that he can be the true franchise running back that they drafted him to be, and the playmaker they hoped he would turn into. I think the Rams win this game. Maybe they aren't going to score 41 points like they did against the Niners, but I think that they could win this game at least by a score or two.
Yeah, I lean more towards the Cowboys on this one solely. They're at home, and they know how to control the clock. I think it's going to be hard if they cannot stop the running game of the Cowboys, which not many teams can do. If they cannot stop that running game, the Cowboys are just going to control the clock, and the Rams aren't going to be able to get any real momentum or rhythm in their offense.
I see what you're saying.
So I see the Cowboys taking this, but I do think this is going to be a very, very intensely competitive game that is not going to... I don't see it being a blowout.
No.
Unless Tremaine Johnson just can't match up with Dez Bryant for some reason.
It'll be a good game for both teams. It'll be a good test for both of them to see what they can do. For the Cowboys specifically, to see if they can run against an elite front seven still with their replacements on the O-line. And for the Rams to see if their offense is actually legit or if they've been at the benefit of facing some weak teams.
Yeah.
Up next is the Titans visiting the Texans.
Another great game.
In Houston. Yeah, this should be this should be a good game to watch. A division matchup that will have that I think is between the top two teams in that division. Yep. The winner of this game should show us really what we might see at the end of the year when these teams are competing for that division championship. I personally really like what the Titans are doing. I think that they are more put together on offense. I think they will have more opportunities to score than the Texans will.
Yes.
However, I could see it going either way, to be completely honest. Either the Titans are going to march down the field and score at will, or the Texans defense is going to show up and stop them and it could go either way. To be completely honest, I could see it happening either way. I think either team could earn a victory here, especially if Deshaun Watson can build on what he did last week.
Yeah, I personally have the Titans winning this game. But like you said, can definitely go either way. This game relies solely on what Deshaun Watson can bring to the table. Moving on from this game, I think that with the next game, Lions at Vikings, and again, another great game. I think a lot of just great games in this next week. Yeah. Lions at Vikings, I think could go both ways again. If Sam Bradford is back for this game, I have a lot of confidence in Minnesota winning this game.
Absolutely.
And even with Case Keenum, they still have a really good shot solely because that defense is so good.
Yeah.
I mean, Minnesota's defense is solid, and they have Stephon Diggs for Case Keenum to lean on. And when he's covered, you got a guy like Adam Thielen down the field that you can throw to too. So I see the Vikings taking this game. But we all know that Matt Stafford doesn't like to go away quietly, so no. I'm sure he'll try to stage some sort of comeback to finish that game off if he can.
Yeah, unfortunately, the downfall for the Lions against the Vikings this week is that the Lions do not have a balanced offense.
Right.
Amir Abdullah has struggled running the ball all year, even though he's healthy, and I don't know if the passing game is going to be enough to put the Vikings away. Trey Waynes and Xavier Rhodes, along with Sandejo and Harrison Smith, all make up a great secondary.
Absolutely.
Full of playmakers, and the front seven is still ridiculous.
Yeah,
Everson Griffin, Danielle Hunter, both of those guys rushing the edge.
Yeah, they got Linval Joseph in the middle.
Anthony Barr, Eric. They still have Eric Kendricks, right?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that defense is pretty stacked. So the Lions are going to have a really tough time scoring points against them. And while the Lions defense is improved from last year, I don't see them really shutting down Vikings offense that has shown to be very balanced in their attack. Whether it's running the ball with Dalvin Cook or passing, I think that they have executed very well what they want to, what they're trying to do on offense. Save for the first game, Case Keenum started, and
right,
that wasn't a very good performance by them. But I mean, you see Case Keenum this last week putting up really good numbers. I would look to see him do the same thing this week against the Lions.
Yeah, in the end, Darius Slay cannot cover 4 different people at once.
No, unfortunately. I'm sure they would love him to.
Yeah.
So then up next, we have the Panthers at the Patriots. This game, I see going to the Patriots.
Yeah.
I don't really see the Panthers being able to stay competitive in this game, only because the Patriots are going to make it very hard for that defense to get off the field. Yep. And by the end of the half, that defense is going to be gassed, and they'll be able to run. I think they'll be able to run the clock out towards the end of the game and really put it away, unless the Panthers are somehow able to find some consistency on offense. They just haven't been able to do that.
Yeah,
so
I see Tom Brady just going off on these guys too. I mean, it's and we don't even really like Tom Brady, you know. We're Seahawks fans. We're salty about the Super Bowl loss. Like that's how we are, but like we have to respect greatness, and when you have a Patriots team coming in off of a 5 touchdown passing touchdown performance for Tom Brady going against the Panthers, that you got Cam Newton on the other side throwing 3 picks on 160 yards. I don't see the Panthers staying within 3 scores in this game. I just see the Patriots just running it up. And I mean, you saw how Brandon Cooks performed against the Panthers when he was for the Saints. I mean, he would burn him every game.
Yep. He's going to do the same thing.
He's going to do the same thing for the Patriots. Only now they have to focus on Gronk. Chris Hogan, James White. I mean,
There's just not enough pieces on that defense
No.
to cover all the weapons that Belichick has at his disposal. Definitely, we're in agreement there for the Patriots handily beating the Panthers.
Absolutely.
Jags at the Jets. I'd like to say the Jags win this game.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
I would hope so too.
After a dominant victory against the Ravens in London, which is their home field,
Yeah.
I think they can come in. They're going to New York or New Jersey. Actually, but I think the Jags have put together something on offense that they can really build on. Running the ball with Leonard Fournette and relying on Bortles to make plays when he needs to.
Yes.
If they can build on that, they'll be just fine against the Jets. The Jets, yes, they still have a good front seven, or at least their D line is still okay. So it could be they could have an issue running the ball.
Right.
But the Jags defense is going to be way too much for Josh McCown and Jermaine Kearse to really take advantage of. It's going to be it's just going to be way too hard for them to do anything against that Jags defense unless the offense is turning the ball over and giving them ideal field position. That's the only way I see this game going in the Jets' favor is if the Jags' offense is turning the ball over. If Bortles is throwing interceptions left and right.
And I feel like that's the story every game with the Jaguars. They simply just have to keep the ball in their hands. They cannot. Blake Bortles has to keep the ball away from the other team constantly. You know, he just if he can limit himself to like one interception. I know you want those interceptions, Blake Bortles. Just limit yourself a little bit because your team wants to win.
He's going for Brett Favre's record, man.
Like just chill, buddy. So I see the Jags winning. Jets don't have enough firepower to compete with that defense. Moving on to 49ers at Cardinals.
This could be an interesting game.
That's a good one.
Two very different teams where the Niners are in a building mode with a lot of very young players.
Yeah.
Whereas the Cardinals are, I'm pretty sure, one of the oldest teams in the league.
They have to be.
They have to be. Their window is essentially closed to compete, especially with DJ going out. I think that their best years are definitely behind them, and I would, even though both of these teams are in my division, I would love to see the Niners get a win against the Cardinals. I think it would be great for that team.
Yep.
It would give them some confidence moving forward that they can take care of a team that has the experience. It would be good for them to get that win and really build on the offensive performance that they were able to put up against the Rams.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great win for them. The only thing is they are very young and they don't have a lot of experience going up against a coach like Bruce Arians who can definitely plan against an underprepared team or an inexperienced team. That's something he's capable of doing. I personally would like to see the Niners winning, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals win.
Yeah, I think it goes really kind of both ways there. I think the Niners are going to struggle to throw the ball consistently against a good Cardinals secondary, albeit Justin Bethel is exposable. I mean, he's not elite by any means, but when you have Tyrann Mathieu and Patrick Peterson out there, it's going to be hard. Patrick Peterson is probably going to be following Garcon all game. Ultimately, it's going to rely on Carlos Hyde being productive. If they can get a balance on their offense, I see the Niners being able to take it. But the Cardinals, I think, have a little bit of an edge, especially being at home. That's just the way I see it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. The home field advantage is definitely going to work in the Cardinals' favor. Since Carson Palmer has seen a lot of action, he's seen a lot of teams and a lot of players and a lot of different things that they are going to try to do. These young guys, the Niners defense is probably not going to do anything too exotic. They're going to do what they can to shut down Larry Fitzgerald and cover the deep ball. That if they can do that, then they'll be able to pull out the win. We'll see what happens. Like I said, I'd like to see the Niners win, but Cardinals could definitely take it at home. Coming up after that is the Eagles coming to... Oh, God, I almost said San Diego. They're coming to L.A. To face the Chargers. And I'm going to go with the upset here. I'm going to take the Chargers on this one.
Really?
Yeah, I think Philip Rivers is going to bounce back and play well against the Eagles' secondary that has not been the greatest up until now. I think the Chargers could pull it off against the Eagles. I'm not saying it's likely, but I'm picking them to be I'm picking them to pull the upset against the Eagles. They'll apply some pressure to Carson Wentz on the offensive side of the ball. Just because Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram are a great tandem
that's true.
For pass rush. I think that the lack of a consistent running game will hurt the Eagles by losing Darren Sproles. I think they're going to rely heavily on their receivers to make plays, and I think that the Chargers could apply some pressure to Wentz, leading to him throwing some errant passes and being unable to sustain drives on offense.
Yep, I think that the upset certainly is possible there, especially with that kind of suspect secondary that the Eagles have. I ultimately, and why I side with the Eagles on this one, even though the Chargers are at home, the Eagles' front seven is solid, and they know how to apply pressure pretty well. And the Chargers have not had a good O-line for years. I mean, they just can't keep Philip Rivers upright. He's getting hurried and sacked, and I just think that the Eagles come into this game and are going to put so much pressure on Philip Rivers that, like you said with Carson Wentz, he's going to have to make errant throws too. I think both quarterbacks are just...
Russell Okung will block all of them. Russell Okung will stop the entire D-line.
The greatest left tackle of all time. Greatest. Ultimately, I see the Eagles winning this game. But I think, if maybe Keenan Allen can bust out a couple big plays or Travis Benjamin down the field, maybe the Chargers can pull away early and just hopefully keep piling it on until the game's over.
Look, I mean, we know Rivers has games where he's going to throw 3 picks and just make some terrible passes. But I don't know, man. I just have a good feeling about the Chargers in this game. I think that they could pull it off. If they were playing a West Coast team, probably not, because then they wouldn't really be playing at home, even though they're at home, because they've had a really hard time filling their stadium with actual Chargers fans.
Very true.
But seeing as they're playing an East Coast team, I think they'll have no problem with the home field advantage part of it. But we'll see how that goes. The next game we have on our list is the Giants at Tampa Bay playing the Buccaneers. This is going to be a battle to see who throws less interceptions. Whoever throws less interceptions in this game will win. And I have no idea who that's going to be, because both of these quarterbacks seem to love throwing interceptions. It seems to be something they enjoy doing almost as much as throwing touchdowns. I think the Giants all around probably have a better team, just as far as offense and defense goes combined. Just because the Bucs, I don't think, have as strong of a defense.
Yeah.
On offense, they're very similar, though. They have standout wide receivers and no running game.
Yep.
And quarterbacks who love to throw interceptions, like I said. So this really will come down to, I believe, which defense makes more plays.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think this is a battle of defenses. And honestly, Giants defense is better than the Buccaneers, especially look at what the Vikings did to them this last week.
Yeah.
I mean, if the Vikings with Case Keenum can do that to the Buccaneers, I would hope that Eli Manning with Odell Beckham Jr. and Brandon Marshall and Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram can beat the damn Buccaneers. Just get a win, Eli, please.
Seriously, I mean, I love watching the Giants lose as much as the next guy.
But come on, dude.
He's like, he's a future Hall of Famer, whether you like it or not, just because of those Super Bowl rings and the last name and everything. But and the stats from being in the league for so long, whatever, controversial, whatever. Ultimately, I see the Giants squeaking out a win if they can make some more plays on defense.
Yeah, and moving on from this game, we're going to a great matchup always. Raiders going to the Broncos.
To the Mile High Stadium.
Look, if the Raiders play like they did this against the Redskins, there's no way in hell they're winning that game against the Broncos.
They won't. They're not going to play like that again. I have a lot of faith in their offense. I don't think they're going to let that kind of offensive performance happen again. It's going to be tough to bounce back against the Broncos, who have a very solid defense.
Yes.
That's going to do everything they can to make them put up another performance like that. But we'll see if the Raiders' offense can bounce back.
Yeah, I'm not so worried about the home field advantage on this one, solely because it's the Raiders. Derek Carr plays like himself wherever he goes. I don't think really home field or anything affects him like that. I think this game is going to rely heavily on what production they get from their running backs. You cannot throw the game 40 times, or you cannot throw the ball 40 times a game against the Broncos and expect to really do much.
Yeah.
Because the Broncos have such a good secondary. They're going to need production. I think more than just rushing yards, they're going to need those short catches out of the backfield to make the Broncos defense come up so that you can get those bigger plays down the field once you have that one-on-one coverage.
Yeah, it really comes down to what they're going to be able to get out of the play-action game against the Broncos. If they can run the ball successfully, they'll pass the ball successfully because they can rely on that defense coming up to stop the run. And you know that Marshawn Lynch is always a threat to defenses, to wear them down, to beat you down. That's what his goal is every time, is to break as many tackles as possible and truck you as hard as he can. That's what he's going to do to try to wear you out. The Broncos are not going to have as much of a problem on offense because of the questionable Raiders defense. Pretty good pass defense as far as the defensive line goes. You got Khalil Mack and Bruce Irvin. You go guys that are making plays to get pressure on the quarterback. But they do not have the playmaking ability in the secondary that the Broncos do. So I think that the Broncos, if they can really humble themselves from last week against the Bills, if they can look at that game and basically just do the opposite of what they did and get back to running the ball more, they can really come into, or they can really have the Raiders come in and take them down. I think that if they're able to run the ball effectively, get C.J. Anderson and Jamal Charles maybe 25 touches combined, I think that they have a good chance of winning this game if they can run the ball effectively.
And against the Raiders, that is something that you should be able to do when you have two backs like C.J. Anderson and Jamal Charles. And moving to our last game here, I guess I should preface, I have the Raiders winning this game.
Okay, well, for the sake of argument, then I'm going to go with the Broncos.
I I'm picking the Raiders. I hope they. I want to see them succeed this year. I like Marshawn Lynch, so I'm gonna pick them here. It can go either way though.
Yeah.
So moving on to our last game, Monday Night Football. We have the Redskins going to Arrowhead to face the Chiefs.
This should be a fun game to watch.
Absolutely.
The Chiefs, of course, are undefeated so far this year and have looked really, really good. They made the Patriots look like fools in Week 1. And if they can do that, I mean, the sky is the limit for them. However, we all know Andy Reid is a great coach when he has all offseason to prepare for the team. I think he's undefeated in opening games or something like that. He's ridiculous when he has all that time to game plan. The Redskins are seeming to find their groove on offense, really starting with their running backs. Guys like Chris Thompson, catching balls out of the backfield, really bringing that defense up to stop the short passes. Terrell Pryor has been underwhelming so far, but I do think that he can build on what he's done so far and hopefully improve this year. I think it's just going to take I think it's just taking a few weeks for Cousins and Pryor to get their groove together and find their own tendencies, and it's definitely different than when Cousins was throwing to Garcon, and he has a couple of years to really get that flow with him, and that kind of rapport with him. So really, it's going to come down to what the Redskins are able to accomplish on offense, because we know the Chiefs are going to they're going to run the ball with Kareem Hunt. You have to watch out for those explosive plays by Tyreek Hill. That's what they're going to do. They're going to try to get the ball into their playmakers' hands. You see it the last 3 weeks, and it's worked out excellently for them. I'm picking the Chiefs to win this game. They've been on a roll. They haven't shown hardly any weaknesses this year. The Redskins, I think, will make it a competitive game, but I see the Chiefs. I see the Chiefs winning this game.
Yeah, I think so much of this game is going to depend on the Redskins containing Travis Kelce. Kelce had, I think, 1 reception for a yard in the last game, and yet the Chiefs still win by 2 scores. I think that in this game, with a guy like Josh Norman on Tyreek Hill probably most of the time, we're going to see Kelce have opportunities to get open when the best corner is on a guy like Tyreek Hill. So I think a lot of this is just going to depend on how much Washington can contain Kelce from taking over the game. And if, I mean, God, it's like a 3-headed monster there. You got Kelce, Hunt, and Hill. I mean, it's that's just a lot to contain. I also have the Chiefs, especially at home, Monday night, prime time. I mean,
in Arrowhead.
What the Redskins are going to have offensively, you got to have Terrell Pryor breaking out here. This has to be his breakout game if they want to win, because their other receivers are not going to be able to produce enough. If Terrell Pryor isn't producing, they can move Marcus Peters onto someone else that might be a little bit more of a threat, like Jameson Crowder, Josh Doxson, and they're going to be able to put someone else like Terrence Mitchell on Terrell Pryor and just call it good. They're going to have to get some production. Terrell Pryor is going to have to keep them honest. And if Jordan Reed plays, that's certainly going to help them as well.
Yeah. I will disagree with you about putting Josh Norman on Tyreek Hill. I really think that would be a bad idea for the Redskins to do, only because Josh Norman is not the best corner to cover a guy like Tyreek Hill. I think
I'd agree.
If they're going to use him the best way they can this week, it's going to be to shut down a side of the field. I think if they can use him to shut down one side of the field, or maybe take away the number 2 and double cover Tyreek Hill, I think that will play to their strengths. A lot of teams will do that when they have a great number 1 cornerback. they put him on the second receiver, the second option on the team, so that way they can double cover the number one guy and also have the other team's number two option covered by an elite talent. I think that would be the best way they could use Josh Norman in this game. But if they try to cover Tyreek Hill with Josh Norman, I mean, they're going to adapt to that and send Tyreek Hill down the field, and he will burn Josh Norman.
He will, yeah. I think, I'm not saying that he necessarily needs to shadow Tyreek Hill, but I think that is going to be a matchup to watch to see how much he is in man coverage with Tyreek Hill. Those are going to be the big play possibilities. But that wraps up all of our Week 4 matchups.
Yeah, didn't really get to talk about any fantasy stuff this week, just because we're already running pretty far on time here.
Yeah, we didn't look to give you a little behind the scenes here. Our original plan was maybe go for an hour, and we're at almost 2 hours. And I want to be able to get this out in a timely manner. So we will be skipping 2 of our fantasy football segments here, but hopefully just our discussions of how these players were playing and our recaps of the games have given you an idea of what some of these players are able to produce. Us bringing up players like Chris Thompson, guys that kind of came out and had great games. Hopefully that kind of gave you a little bit of help if you were listening for fantasy football.
Really what it comes down to with fantasy, in my opinion, is you want guys that are on a successful offense.
Right.
Sure, like last year you had Terrell Pryor on the Browns. He was like the only guy. So, of course, he was doing okay in fantasy because he's getting those volume stats. But really focus on the first thing you should ask yourself is about the matchup, and then after that you should ask yourself how consistent the offense has been. After that, it's really your decision. That's kind of just how I go about it. I really try to start the guys that I know produce week in and week out, and I try not to change up my lineup too much or take too many risks, and I just go from there. But we can get into fantasy discussion maybe next week when we don't have an introduction to do, or we can be a little bit more brief with our recaps. But look to see some fantasy content within the coming weeks. Maybe we'll have podcasts that are more focused on fantasy relevance, or post smaller clips here and there just talking about fantasy specifics. But hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to this as much as we enjoyed talking about it. I had a great time doing our first podcast. This was
this was a lot of fun.
This was really fun, and came a little bit more naturally to me than I thought it would. So I enjoyed this. Hopefully you guys liked the content. If you didn't, you can be sure to tell me all about what you hated in the comments section below. That's totally fine. I would love to hear it. And maybe if there's anything we can improve upon, it would be great to hear your guys' suggestions.
Feedback is great.
Feedback is awesome. I would love to hear it. So I guess we'll wrap it up from there.
Yeah, I'll say we did make a prediction, obviously, for the Thursday night game. By the time this comes out, I want to be able to get these out no later than Saturday, obviously, because I want them to be watchable before all the Sunday games and the Monday night game hits. So look for these to be coming out anywhere between, dare I say, Wednesdays to Saturdays. Expect them probably to be coming out Friday, Saturday time. If I happen to have time to edit this 2 hours of podcast, before the Thursday night game, I'll be sure to release it. But just look for these to be coming out later in the week.
Yep, that sounds good. We'll be hopefully hearing some feedback from you guys. We'd love to hear it. until then, hopefully everybody gets a chance to watch some games this weekend, and we'll see you again next week.
Yep. Thank you for watching the Philbrook Football Podcast.
Cut!